You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Coaching Inn, where I'm in conversation at the book corner with Laura Wong and Amy Cooper, and how exciting to talk about books. We'll come to that in a moment. First of all, just to let you know that there'll be an open house at the Coaching Inn on Friday, the 28th of March, where the Coaching Inn will be open all day here online, and you can pop in and out at any time and meet other listeners, which should be huge fun. And if nobody comes, I'll just be here on my own. We'll be sharing the link in the show notes over time. And also check out the website 3dcoaching.com, where you'll find some really lovely live events that are coming up in May 2025. So welcome, Laura and Amy. Laura, you emailed me and went, maybe. And I went, yes, come.
That's right. That's very true.
And you said, I'm bringing Amy. And I went, that's great. So
Who's
Laura,
Amy?
tell us a bit about your coaching journey. Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, I met Amy at the coaching diploma that we both did, practitioner diploma with the Academy of Executive Coaching. That was back in October 2023. And since then, we have kept in touch on a regular basis to talk all things coaching and other things as well. And she's become a great colleague and also friend. So when the opportunity came up to come on the podcast, Amy was the obvious choice of someone to join me. So thanks for coming, Amy.
Yeah. And you both love books, I'm hoping.
We do love books. I've been reading a lot.
Good.
My ever-growing pile of books has been slowly reducing over the last 3 months. And that's been a good motivation to actually get me to read some of the books I always have great intentions to read and don't always get round to reading them. So yeah, thanks for the nudge, Claire.
Well done. It's a pleasure. So Amy, tell us about you.
Oh, thanks. And just to say about the book thing, I think we both feel like we've got quite impressive bookshelves. That's another thing that we pride ourselves on. And we often share a lot of books that way. My coaching journey probably started about 5 years ago. I was on maternity leave. I was a teacher at the time, and a great organisation called Maternity Teacher, Paternity Teacher was offering free coaching alongside CPD. And I lapped that up. And actually, my coach that I had back then is still my coach today. And I've been really fortunate. I say fortunate, actually. It was a lot of my own doing. I'm going to own that, I think, from my coaching experience as well, of, approaching my employers and saying, I want coaching. Will you pay for it? And then saying yes. So actually going out there and asking. But my coaching's taken me through changes of jobs twice and another child. So I've got 2 kids now. And the coaching for me has been part of like my maintenance toolkit. So after having lots of coaching, stepping into delivering coaching and becoming a coach, as Laura said, was last year. I work with ECTs, early career teachers. And as part of my role, again, that the company I work for, ISTIP, have paid for my professional development, which is amazing. And I'm sort of very much focused on getting coaching out there within education and trying to help early career teachers, but also leaders as well. Very exciting.
Lovely. So before we talk about workbooks, best novel at the moment. What is your best novel?
I'll go first, Laura, just because it's top of my head. I'm not necessarily the best one. The one I'm currently reading is The Nightingale, which is, I seem to be drawn to World War II books, I realised. I love a Sebastian Faulks. I like, something that's going on in the war, it seems. And I definitely get that from my mum. My mum's a bit obsessed with war. But yes, that seems to be grabbing me at the moment. Good book.
Nice. What about you, Laura?
The best book I've read recently, and my current book of choice, is it's a non-fiction autobiographical novel by a lady called Tara Westover. It's called Educated. And I've been recommending it to all my friends as actually one of the best books I've ever read.
Oh, really?
It's about, yeah, it really is. I put it up there as one of my top books, actually. It's about Tara, the author, who grew up in a very, very strict Mormon family in the US and was homeschooled throughout her early education, and sort of, I say, put to work, but encouraged by her father, who was very dominant in that dynamic of the family, to work in his business. And she wasn't really given the opportunities that many of us have to have the education, and yet she pushed through that, and she got herself a college education initially in the US, and then has came to the UK and has gone to Cambridge, got a PhD. She has just pushed through all those boundaries. So it's a hard read, but it's a fascinating story of strength, resilience, grit. I loved it. Really, really good.
Nice. My current one is John Banville, The Snow. So at the last Supervision Community Cafe before Christmas, I was chatting to Wealthea Patterson, and I just said, we were just talking about reading, and she said, "Oh, have you read John Banville? He's an Irish novelist." And I went, "No." And then over Christmas, I've picked out a few of his books. They're really interesting. They're kind of crime set in the 1950s. So the 1950s isn't my era for novels at all, but it's just really fun. And it was just nice to jump into somebody else's book and not a book that I would have personally chosen off a bookcase.
They're often the best.
Yeah, I love a recommendation. Yeah. I love someone to recommend something. Otherwise, I think I'm very superficially drawn to a book cover. Like, oh, I like that one. I get that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. If it's not crime, I usually am buying it because of the cover, which is probably not the best solution.
I love to find an author that I feel like I can invest myself in, and then it's like a TV series. Oh, great! There's loads of series I can watch. I can read all of these. I know I'm going to like them.
Yeah. We were in Tewkesbury the other day, and Tewkesbury has an amazing secondhand bookshop on the high street that has floor-to-ceiling bookcases of really old books. But outside, they have a kind of corridor of short bookcases where they've got novels in sequential order by author. Second-hand novels.
Oh, wow.
So it's like going into a new bookshop, but they're second-hand. So you can do what you're saying there, Amy, and you can choose your new author, and you can buy the whole shelf.
Wow.
Yeah, great.
It's a really exciting thing.
Yeah.
I stood there looking at one author, and it was the whole thing. It was like a meter. And I thought, will I, won't I? I might go back, because it's really tempting. It's so exciting to see somebody's pretty much full works in one go. Yeah.
Amazing.
So Educated sounds like one to pick up.
Interestingly,
Definitely.
Laura and I, we spoke about that before, didn't we, Laura, that book? And a book that we've both been reading has been How to Fail by Elizabeth Day.
Yeah.
Who I absolutely love her podcast. And I've been actually listening to the book rather than reading it. And that book gets mentioned, and Tara comes onto the audiobook. She's been interviewed about it, and just fascinating. And her resilience, and the decisions she's had to consciously make in order to survive, really.
Absolutely. And in the end, to sort of step away from her she's torn. It's kind of the tale of two halves, really. Her desperate desire to better herself and get the education she wants, but at the cost of almost losing her family in the process. It's a hard read, but it's a book I'm really pleased I've read. So yeah, that's definitely high up there on my list.
Oh, thank you. That sounds amazing. Sounds like one to... You've got to read them in the right place, haven't you? That's for me. So where I read a novel and where I read a workbook aren't the same.
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah. And also just the space. I find I often, my excuse is that it can take me quite a long time to read books, because in the kind of day-to-day of normal life, just because it's a time. I'd much rather sit and read like on holiday and just be able to read for an hour or two at a time in a really like relaxed, calm way, as opposed to snatching snippets of time, which I often find when I'm at home in the normal humdrum of life, and then I pick up a book on my bed and then read 10 pages and fall asleep, and then I can't remember what I've read. I find it all, I'd much rather just get through it. That's my preferred way.
It's interesting as well, though, isn't it, with books? I was actually having a chat with my coach about my reading, because I think for a long time I felt like I wasn't a very good reader, because reading to me was you sit there and you read from cover to cover, and you read every single word on the page. And it was only recent, and then we sort of explored that during my coaching session. And I was like, and she was like, okay, well, what other ways are there of doing it? I was like, well, what do you mean? And she was like, well, can you dip? We were like, I can actually dip in and out of a book. That's why there's a contents at the front. Like, you can pick different chapters that you could read. And I was like, that was a bit of a revelation for me. I felt like I had to read everything in order to say I've read that book. I needed to be able to say I've read all of it. And then chatting to a friend who just eats up books, and what became clear there is that she doesn't read every word on a line. I was like, what do you mean you're not? She's like, you just get, the more you read, the more you just get a sense of the story, rather than, whereas I like to read every single word. So actually I'm giving myself quite a hard job a lot of the time. And I think with novels are definitely in my bedtime or holiday space, is the escapism that they bring. Whereas the workbooks, really, they get me excited, but I can't read that before bed. I need to switch off. I need to be able to actually sleep. Yeah.
Because they build, don't they? For me, a workbook goes, oh yeah, and there's this. Oh, what about that?
Yeah. And a lot of workbooks I've read, actually, you can read the first few chapters and get a sense of what this person is talking about. And that's enough to be able to say, oh, I know what they're on about. I know what they're talking about. And then you can dip in and out for like maybe specific strategies, for example. You don't need to read it all.
And come back to, I think the workbooks are the ones that I'll be forever. I was just thinking about your books this morning, Claire, after the discussion we'd had earlier. And it's the underlines, it's the referring back, it's the flip, it's the pages where you can see that you've read more. It's the turn down pages, more so than a novel. It's just a different type of reading, isn't it?
Yeah, I do that with my own books. So,
yeah.
Did I write that? That's interesting.
That sounded good.
Quite good.
Who wrote that? Quite like that word. That line.
I think what I'm getting to is that permission as well, like giving yourself permission. It's interesting. I think that sort of, for me, the childhood thing of like what it is to read, never feeling like I was doing it properly, and having a great bookshelf, having loads of big classics on my shelf as a child, but never reading them and never feeling like quite good enough. But actually as an adult now, giving myself permission to go, no, I don't need to read it all. I could look at Blinkist if I want to summarize a book in 20 minutes and listen to it. It's okay to listen to audiobooks instead of reading it. That's still reading. I'm definitely on that side of that argument. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Although I have an issue about why can't we share audiobooks in the same way we can share real books? But that's a different
point.
subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've just listened to Unlearning Silence by Elaine Lynn Herring, who's just been on the podcast. And
that sounds an interesting
And I've
one.
also, it is. You need to listen to the episode. And she sent me a hard copy of the book.
Oh, look.
So I've now listened to the whole book, and now I'm going to go into the hard copy and take the gold.
Yeah.
Because it's a different thing, isn't it? The audio book, you kind of get the mood, whereas in the hard copy you get the soundbite things.
Unlearning Silence. I'm quite intrigued by the title.
Oh, which is why I invited her to the podcast.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's really, really good. It's about finding your voice, but it's about a load more than that. Listen to
That's
the
on my
episode.
list. Yeah.
Well worth it. Then you can listen to the episode without reading the book, and then you can decide whether to go for the book, and then which version of the book you go for. Do you go for Blinkist, or do you go for Audible, or do you go for the actual hardback?
Actual book.
Yeah. So what are you reading work-wise at the moment?
Well, I would argue that Elizabeth Day, How to Fail, is as a coach very much a workbook for me.
Yeah.
There was definitely, and I think when I'm thinking about my clients or coaches that I work with, the range of books I probably draw from as resources for them is really diverse, in the sense that I could pull from a child's book. Like the other day, I was talking to my clients tend to be women, leaders or senior leaders. I do have a couple of men that I coach as well, but similar things come up. And one book that I found myself talking about last week was a children's book called The Boy Who Loved Everyone. And it's such a, I mean, children's books in themselves have just come on such a long way. And they're really like deep stuff that they get into. But this one was about a boy and how he told everyone that he loved them. Like he told the tree that he loved the tree. He told the birds. He told the kids in his nursery. He told the homeless man on the bench that he loved him. And it was about everybody's reactions to him. And he got really despondent because people weren't saying it back to him. And his mum, who, again, I think I would say as a mother, I idolised her a bit. She was so calm and collected and seemed to really have it all together. But her was sort of and I was like, why can't I have these like gift of things to say to my children? But she's put it across that everybody shows their love in different ways. And then she'll just talks through the homeless man was feeding the cats a can of tuna. He loves the cats. The birds love the tree because they make nests in the tree. The children love the birds because they feed the birds. And then when he returns to nursery, all the children want to play with him, whereas before they felt very awkward about him showing his love. And I felt like that sort of message of sharing your vulnerability, sharing your love for others without wanting anything in return. Just so what a lovely message. And, you know, talking about women in leadership, and they were concerned about what protection, what do you put up your barriers to everyone around you? What's expected of you in that role? Should you be harsh and hard, or actually bring yourself as a woman, as maybe a mother, bring everything you've learned to the table, and then what does your team actually need from you? Well, in a lot of ways, actually love is what they need, and they want to be seen, and they want that opportunity. They want to be empowered. So, that's just one example. I think a whole range of books counts as workbooks for me.
Can I say what I love most about what you just said is that book's inside you because you've read it so many times.
Yeah. And that's it as well, isn't it? They're the things you draw on. I'm like, oh, I've read this a number of times. Like, ask me about Julia Donaldson. Oh, that's another one. Yeah. For me, I think Laura Reed probably talks about it. The Squash and the Squeeze by Julia Donaldson. Oh, that's changed my life, that book. This old woman has a very small house and she's moaning about her house, and she meets this wise man and says, what should I do about my house? It's too small. And he says, get a chicken. And then he says, get a sheep, a cow, a pig. And she's like, my house is even smaller. And oh, God, it's too much. It's too much. And then he says, right, take them all out your house. And then she goes, oh, it's amazing. It's so big. And it's exactly the same size house. And I was like, yes, that's life. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's in you. And those books that only go through our head don't stay in us, do they? They kind of pass through our brain and out the other side. Whereas it sounds like Educated got into your soul, Laura.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I need to reread it, actually. It definitely did. But just picking up on Amy there in that theme of sort of love, I've just started it. It's my current book. It's Kind by Graham Alcott, just about the idea of work and work culture, and actually putting kindness ahead of everything else. I think it's easy to lose sight of that in a culture that often promotes being out for oneself, but it's about sort of stepping back and remembering kindness. And the preface to that book is he references his son, who was is about 11, I think now, but was born with such a significant life limiting sort of condition, and just actually how that brought everything into perspective for him, and almost the kindness that his son shows to him, and how he shows, and that sort of relationship has fundamentally changed him, and how he is sort of taking that message out into the world. So that's one that I'm currently reading. That the front cover sort of says the quiet power of kindness at work. So it's almost it's there, but not in a shouty, sort of shouting from the rooftops way. And the other book I'm again dipping in and dipping out of, to take the point of workbooks, is I think it was mentioned before in Book Corner, but Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? Dr. Julie Smith. I just find that is a really good, to Amy's point about workbooks don't necessarily need to be related specifically to work. That to me is a life Bible almost. Something I wish I'd read in my 20s, I think. But just so practical, really helpful. Really helpful tips. I'm enjoying that too.
Yeah. Nice. So, looking at the year ahead, where is your focus? Where is your attention drawn at the moment in terms of your reading?
For me, I think I have, I've sort of, what am I moving towards? I think it's a bit more about, is it parent books or not? Yeah, it's the sort of sense of attachment. Right. I think is a key one for me, which regards to parenting, but also within my role as head of training with teachers. I think attachment actually crosses a lot of different areas. And I think that's also within my coaching, in the sense that my approach to coaching, even though Laura and I have gone for executive coaching, still very much seeing it as whole person approach to coaching. I very much feel like you can't separate the two. You don't just sort of like leave yourself at the door when you start work. So I encourage and invite my clients to really open up to how are things impacting on you from outside. So I think things like attachment, Gabor Mate, any sort of books by him, I think are probably. My husband's a drama therapist, and so he's like an idol for him. And I think I've sort of put it off for too long, and I need to start delving into Gabor's work.
And it sounds like that there are lots of books already on your shelves in your house.
Well, we've talked about another one was Body Keeps a Score. Laura and I have talked about that one before. And it's like, and I think trauma-informed practice is coming into education a lot more now. There's more awareness of it, and you can't avoid it. So I think having a more understanding of that is important too.
Yeah. And that everyone has a story. And whether it's the child coming into the classroom or the person coming to work, we're really impacted, aren't we, by our story and what that has been like. Yeah.
I mean, even taking it to the level of, I said already, sort of like coaching leaders or senior leaders, they're shaped by their story, by their history, by have they seen good leaders at work, have they seen poor? If they're a female leader, I think there's another layer there as well of, has it been predominantly male leaders? Have they seen any good female leaders that they want to become? Or, it's really complex. So unpacking all of that to help them move forward towards their goals, I think is really important.
Yeah.
I think I feel like it's just sitting there at the back of my mind that I'd be bad of me not to bring it up. But another absolute hero of mine is Brené Brown, obviously.
Oh, obviously.
Daring Greatly is probably, you asked us our favourite fiction. That has to be my favourite non-fiction workbook, has to be Daring Greatly. And when I found that, courtesy of my coach actually, that absolutely changed my mind. The Man in the Arena, the Roosevelt quote. I actually did a whole school assembly on that speech, because the idea of rumbling, getting in it, facing your fears, that's where like Elizabeth Dacre, if you were to draw a map, they're all sort of connected for me. Like let's, don't avoid the difficult conversations, face things head on, eat the frog, all those different phrases that we have. It's all about, come on, confront it and make them even like the other phrase that comes up for me is from Frozen 2, which is do the next right thing, as Anna says. It's those right, make those decisions, come into things consciously, face them, and dare greatly.
Yeah. The thing I love about Brene Brown is that she has sound bites that are easy to remember.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you fall over something and you remember that, you can kind of grab your inner wisdom.
Yeah. Yes.
My favourite is clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And you just think, oh, yeah. So what does that mean right now? You know, what choices do I have right now, knowing that I know that? Yeah, and she also talks from her heart, doesn't she?
Vulnerability and shame, the two, and even her TED talk, like the really famous one, and she talks about in a book about, and I think it's in Dare to Lead, she talks about it, but the vulnerability of actually, do you know what, I'm going to do this TED talk and I'm going to turn all the lights up so I can see every single face in the room, and that actually I'll find easier than talking into the abyss. And she talks about how the first time she did it was an absolute failure, and that's okay. And I think that was a massive shift for me personally. But that idea that failure is not bad at all. It's just learning. And then think about Elizabeth Day and How to Fail. I think, all those failures that I've had in my life, they've been huge transition points for me. And I've become better. You can't have growth without that vulnerability and that courage to try out something different.
Right.
But I'll get off my soapbox now, Laura.
What are you
I'll leave it
thinking
to
about
you.
this year?
You're off. Yeah.
What are you thinking about this year, Laura?
Yeah, it's interesting just listening to Amy and reflecting on that. I think, my focus with my coaching is on sort of midlife women in probably senior corporate roles where they have sort of got themselves there 20 or 25 years into their career and are sort of waking up and thinking, what am I doing? What's happened? Where am I going? How am I going to make use and live the next sort of chapter of my life the way that I want to lead it? So sort of taking ownership of that. I've recently read Lucy Ryan's Revolting Women, and just...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I so enjoyed that. And I think there's a real movement at the moment and a real sort of shift of momentum around, say specifically women, but this kind of group of powerful women, really, where it's sort of taking control back and actually working within a system that almost doesn't respect and honour that and make the most of all the skills and positive attributes that women of that age have, and I think leaning into that and recognizing that it's a time of life that women have got a lot to give, and to just allow that flexibility and wanting to make the most of the time that we've got. So as in 4,000 Weeks, Oliver Burkeman, the whole sort of taking power and sort of claiming it back. So I think things that, and to Amy's point, that not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to be vulnerable, not being afraid to talk about what it feels like to be at that stage of life, and not kind of sidle off into the sidelines and just kind of feel that's it, but actually to see it as a positive. And actually on that point, I went to a podcast event towards the end of last year, and a postcast from Midlife Live event where a lady, Jessica Hepburn, who's written a book, Save Me From the Waves, was there. And she is in her mid-50s now and was a senior director at the Lyric Theatre, and through dint of difficult personal circumstances and her struggle with children, not being able to have children, left that role, but has then taken on, three of the biggest challenges. So she swam the Channel, she ran the London Marathon, and she climbed Mount Everest. And the book Save Me From the Waves is about her climbing Mount Everest and her listening to Desert Island Discs and all of the library and through the training and all of the music and how music played a part in her journey, and taking her own life. Talk about a story and life being a story, but taking her own life and all the different elements of her life and different music that would symbolize that. And she did that through the training and then the climb itself. So yeah, it's that adventure. I love an adventure. I love travel. So sort of encapsulating that somehow.
Yeah, and there's something there about, if I can't do this, what can I do?
Yeah,
which kind of connects to what you said, Amy, about how to fail. So what's the book that you would write if you did?
Wow,
Good question.
You don't have to write. Just saying it doesn't mean you have to write it. Just
No,
saying.
that's the thing. Can you see the commitment in my?
Yeah,
oh
I can
God,
see
if I
you go,
say it out loud.
Yeah, write that.
Yeah,
that's a
I
good
think
question.
I would definitely. It would be something non-fiction, and it would be something non-fiction, and I think along the lines of being a mum. It would definitely be this how to fail thing. It'd be about being a mum, being a senior leader, talking about how you can't have it all at the same time, but you can have it. And definitely something about equality or equity, maybe more about what we can bring to the table as women. I think I've definitely become more of a feminist as I've grown older. And the why can't I? Why not? Rather than can I please? I think. And getting more angry about that. Like, having it's hard, I think, to move up to senior leadership actually in education, and not just it's multifaceted, isn't it? I think as well. There's that intersectionality about it of being a woman, but then other things at play as well that can make it quite difficult. So yeah, it would definitely be a how to fail in education as a woman.
Nice.
Great. That's a chapter on the podcast.
What's yours, Laura?
Mine would be actually around. I feel it's something around the role of a mother, and speaking from personal experience, having had quite a break from my sort of professional life before I had my kids, and then pivoting and coming back into coaching, and I very actively took a step away. And I think it's something around, and I know a lot of women do for a variety of reasons, it's something around the value of that, and something around, and at the time I sort of felt I sort of drifted off and lost my confidence and sort of became a different version of me, really. Loving being a mum, and I would never have made a different choice, but it was almost like I just kind of morphed into this different version of Laura. So I think it's something around recognizing that women make different choices, and sometimes those choices are forced upon them, but and almost rewriting the narrative on, and saying, whatever you do, whether you stay at home, whether you work, we're all women doing our best in the best way that we can. And I think it's easy to criticize people who make different choices for different reasons. So it's something around the validation of that, and around to Amy's point about sort of being brave, daring greatly, just leaning into whatever stage life, whatever stage of life you're at, and knowing that whatever stage it is, it's a stage. It doesn't mean it's the end. You can pivot, re-emerge, as it were. It's always learning. Life's a journey, isn't it? And learning at every stage.
And then there's what we wish we knew. Which goes back to that.
What would I tell my 20-year-old self? Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? You think, I remember I started my life at Tesco.com in marketing and 20 odd years ago now, 25 years ago, age 24. And I mean, I thought I didn't think I knew it all, but I thought that was it. I'd done my university, I started my job, and I think, gosh, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But that's the benefit of hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah. So, as we come to the end of our conversation together right now, which I'm hugely relieved hasn't left me with a list of 10 books to read. It's just left me with a few to have a look at.
Including children's books. Yep.
Including
What would
Julia
be your
Donaldson, yeah.
number one recommendation? What would be your number one recommendation to our listeners, apart from Julia Donaldson? Who, for those of you in other parts of the world, is a very famous writer for children, young children. She does amazing picture books with lovely stories,
You've
meaningful
got to say
stories.
Axel Scheffler as well then in that case.
Yes, and all her others. So what would be your number one recommendation for our listeners today?
Mine
Very
is def-
boringly, it would just have to be Daring Greatly.
Daring Greatly.
Absolutely. I think, and once you start on that one, then you've got a whole range of other ones. You've got the podcast, you've got, like, she's covered the whole media spectrum. But I think, especially as a woman, I think there's something there. Yeah, love what's there.
Yeah, and who doesn't wear the uniform when she goes to do talks, which I love. Laura, what's yours?
Mine is Educated, Tara Westover. I'd love to get your feedback, Claire, if you do read it, because that's definitely up there. One of my top 3 books I'd say I've ever read.
That's incredible. So what a recommendation that is. Educated by Tara Westover. I will go find it. And then then I've got the internal, what do I do with the books that are already on my desk? But that's for, I think I'll deal with that somewhere else.
Sounds like another
everybody,
podcast. Yeah,
exactly. We'll have her on the podcast. That's a great way of doing it. Because then you get the book as well. Thank you everyone for listening. Laura Wong and Amy Cooper, thank you so much for coming to the Coaching In. I'll put the links to the books in the show notes so that you can see. Remember, we've got an open house on the 28th of March, 2025. Pop in any time of day and we'll have a book table and you can go talk books with other listeners of the Coaching In. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Laura. And bye-bye for now. Bye.
Thanks for the opportunity. Bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching In, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching In, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.